Okay, on this installment, I guess, of Tales from the Campfire here, we're in the Well of Dragons. This is on a video game that I play. It's a Dungeons and Dragons type game, and it's got all this old folklore and everything built into it, as I keep saying, on ancient knowledge, and some of it's actually there. Well, that's not what I really wanted to show you here, although there's a couple of aspects that we could like to show you. See this dragon hoard of gold here that's massing here around us, and we actually accrue that by fighting all these other guys, which are actually setting up a horde to try to bring Tiamat back. And that's over at this castle that we used to have to queue up to back at the back, but now it's just in the queue list. So people used to have to come to right here. Well, what you can see from here, bam, that castle right there in the distance. And that's where they were summoning Tiamat. Tiamat's a five-headed dragon. She's basically five of the major dragon types put together with all different types of breath weapons. If you look down, there's some giant bones that are there and there and there, and there's these dragon bones that are there. I recently did a video talking about sacred weapons and how the ancient Viking people, Norse if you will, had brought with them this ability not only to take and turns a stone into a sword, like we talked about Arthur pulling a sword from a stone is something a little bit different, and it goes along with that, but a way to turn common iron into steel and to make sacred weapons. In fact, it involved making a charcoal out of the bones of ancestors and great warriors and imbibing that into the weapon. And so whenever these people are doing it, you can be assured that they were going all out or all in, if you will, on this situation. So you wonder why they had all of these abilities, and it was supposedly given for magic. And I was talking to typing back and forth on a couple of statements here with one of my regulars, and it just, oh man, I feel a video coming on. So I thought I would use this setting and mention it. The Bible is looked at, not to just single it out, but the Bible is looked at by a lot of scholars as really having taken ancient tales and turned it pretty much into more of a humanistic type form. Now, I told you that in the ancient tales, my research shows that actually this is ancestor veneration, and these people, in some way, embellished if you will, existed at one time, such as Cronus, Saturn, the Phoenician. This actually happened. And all these others that happened. Well, Israel is the ancient Phoenician name for Saturn, that wandering star that moves as opposed to staying still like the other stars do. Well, they swirl through the heavens, but they don't go wandering. That's what planet means. And how Noah would have replicated pretty much Uranus and being castrated by his son, and you always wonder what's going on with the tent idea, and then they have to cover him up with a towel and he gets cursed. But no, it's not even him, it's his fourth son for some reason, because they want to call out these certain people. It was something that happened long ago, and that's in other videos. But make no bones about it, haha, bones of ancestors has been something that's gone on for a long time. We've seen a lot of archaeological sites that are actually showing where they had taken the skull and recovered it with a death mask and all of these rituals that go along with it. In fact, we've talked about how buzzards, well, they're stuck. Maybe we'll start going here in a minute. So we're seeing these vultures and these buzzards in a very lit sun swirling around here. And of course, instantly, whenever we see this, even in the distance, a swirl of these birds, we think of death. That something died, right? It's not just a Texas thing, it's pretty much worldwide because these creatures help take care of that. But see how they swirl up and go into the sky all magically like? They take that up to the heavens. And that signification with vultures and so on is carried into ancient Egypt. And I talked about in a few other videos and even showed some of the evidences of this ritual and showing this dais and people being put up on it and their heads are separate and there's vultures and everything. Yeah. So that leads to angels and wings of angels and so on. And feathers really meant something to a lot of people. Everybody instantly associates it probably with the Amerindian people. But that comes from actually before they even became Amerindians and went across the little bridge thing there. And I don't want to go deep into that, but it comes from before that. We've seen the ancient burials where they had bird suits and birdman suits. Total outfits and rituals. Oh, and they've got hemp and everything else and da 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 to go along with these death rituals that are taking people to the afterlife too. But in the Bible, people think that this doesn't exist. But a lot of this exists, for there are dragons, literally dragons, mentioned in the Bible at least 3 times that I know of. Then we have Leviathan and all these creatures that we've correlated, unicorns. For verbatim, it's written in there. Well, we've talked about that in other videos and how that goes back to an ancient rhinoceros, a one-horned rhino, indicating that a lot of this comes from the Wayback Machine. And while I can sit and tear it apart and show you how, see how it actually does go with things. So whenever you have a mythology, even the Bible, a lot of these things can connect. But in a long, drawn-out way, let's see, what have I got here? This is my snow leopard manicore. And a manicore is a showing of the 4 zodiac points, as we talked about before, with Scorpio and the lion of Leo and a man's face, and then the bird wings. And that's the cross. Oh, yeah. All this stuff goes together in a way that, the pagan, no. No, it goes together. And it always did. In fact, our modern form is just a derived form out of things that have gone on before, including the ideals of Jesus. But let's look at some of these artifacts here. I could even break out some of them in pictures, or at least some artist rendering of what these things look like. But let's see if we can do this more mentally picturing and everything. So the Shroud of Turin, that is associated with possibly having magic effects with it from the Wayback Machine. That if you were to use that in certain rituals, certain things can happen. Could you imagine if you slept in the tomb of Christ overnight, or maybe if you buried a dead person there overnight, what you would think that could possibly happen if you did the right ritual along with it? Right? Or would it take 3 days? Like the sun takes to wobble back up, which is what that's really signifying. Yet, it makes you wonder, what's supposed to be about that. Most people don't know in the Bible it tells you that whenever Christ got up, that all the dead saints came out like zombies and walked the earth and everything. And if that had actually happened, somebody else would have wrote down about it, wouldn't he? Yeah, so there's zombies in there too. But so just that Shroud of Turin idea, and of course he's supposed to have been buried in that and reborn in the power of that moment ends up making a negative on that cloth. Let's move on though. Thorns of Christ. That's one thing that people know about, and then supposedly what they do is they take a thorn bush and they pull this off, and then the priest does this little ritual over it, and it's supposed to be like the thorn of Christ, because everybody can't have a thorn of Christ. The little crown of thorns that he wore, oh, it might have had, what, 30, 40 on it? Well, the real trick is, people, with that, and there's all this biblical things in the old days that people used to say about this. It's just the magic of everything. Stick with me. That because it poked Christ and has the blood of Christ upon it, you could take somebody that's in a dying state or some problem and poke them with this. Whenever you do, it turns to dust and blows away. But then the ailment is gone, and it's like this guy has had a rejuvenation, an odd rejuvenation. Like all of a sudden he's young again. Somebody that's ailed, you can think of like in Lord of the Rings, where the man is under that sorcery and he's just all trodden down and just eat up with it. Could go any day or something. What's going on here? But when it comes back and rejuvenates him, it's a man that's back in his 40s, 50s, and really holding well instead of not. So it's this real recourse of that. But you got to poke them with that. You can use that in D&D campaigns and stuff like that. It's pretty neat idea and concept to put in, but in reality, this actually was something that was well known. And this sphere of destiny, everybody knows the spear of destiny, and how they had this spear and it's got this piece of wood that they've got left that was it, and some effigy that was supposed to be the one that poked Christ's side and did it, and then so that thing has done the same thing. What would it do to you? What could it do? I think I just got here at the end of that. So you see this angel. Yeah, there's tears of an angel. There's an angel's feather that's mentioned a few times. Not just some ambiguous thing. You might not have ever heard about it because this type of paganistic type things. No, this was in that religion from the start. Now we're wheedling away from things like that somewhat, but all these esoteric knowledges went with it, just like they did, and all of the paganistic ones that I talked about. In fact, some of them that I've shown you have been quite just the mimic, their variation of such. Like the tale of Gilgamesh telling you that this is how it happened one way, and they're really using that as a blueprint to go, nah, you've heard that it's this, but it kind of happened more like that. Of course, in their version, it's only about 4000 BC that an Adamic man shows up. But now we've looked at archaeology and gotten enough to it to where we go, well, here's somebody of that time, and they go, okay. And you go, all right, well, if they're of that time, here's something that we're positive is a little bit older. In fact, here's one that's a little bit older than that. Are any of these guys ranged, or are they just going to sit there? Yeah, they're just going to sit there. That's hilarious. So I'll have my guy go down and kill him. Good companion. Yeah, I may want to get that. What is this? Oh, Dragon Horde coffer, and then complete one heroic encounter in the time limit. 10 minutes. And Selune is my goddess that I pray to every time you see me pray or go, that's, and you can do that. Well, time intervals change. I can turn around and hop up and get up on that little ledge there, but let's just stay here. This is overlooking where they summon dragons at once per hour. And the heroic that's going on here, you have to kill off these little drake kind of concepts. In fact, the one that's right over here that we're looking at, that red drake, I actually have one of those. Oh, let's see. So, thorns of Christ and things like that, but also there's pieces of his cross that are said to have sacred powers too. Or how about that cup? Yeah, that cup of Christ. That's real famous. You know, like you saw in the Indiana Jones movies and stuff, and he is chosen wisely. That goes along with it real well. See, so fire drake, and I've got one. Rawr. It's pretty cute. Anyhow, well, I had this list, but of course I was able to sit and type it out to this guy. But how many more of them do we have? And you mentioned dragons, they're in there. In fact, there's a book that's thrown out of the pantheon in the group that actually mentions Christ as a baby, that when Mary and Joseph were going back and stuff, that they were attacked by dragons, but they're apparently smaller dragons, like the smaller ones that you're seeing there, and not some woo. So this gives the idea of drakes that we're looking at right here. And Christ urges to be set down. They set him down, and he comes up and gives that finger signal or whatever, and then all the dragons are all cool. And isn't that great? Yeah, they went away. Yeah, you can find it. It was written back in the day. But how about the sword of Gabriel? There's very few swords. In fact, what actually we're looking at when we look at the Bible is trying to pull off a meek and nomadic people that did all these things and helped make it happen, right? But if you look in reality, it's giving credit to quite a few different people. But in my studies showing you, I've told you that they're all related to kind of these same people here. And that it's not a story about these one guy. And if we were to take somebody that it's known even nowadays to have been quite advanced up just north of there and was semi-nomadic, because they are in the Bible, it would maybe make another connection for you that they're talking about openly there. For we know that when all this is going on, other people had great cities already going on and everything. They're coming out as being the last in line. What's strange is that kind of the same people actually heralded all of this, like pre-proto-Egypt, like everything. We've been showing that in other videos too, so no need in hashing that. What other artifacts do they have there? Well, there's a sacred donkey that's supposed to be the same donkey that took Abraham away, because it's written in the zodiac, and it's that one. Just like Pegasus keeps showing up at the call, or you know, Shadowfax shows up at a whistle. It it's the same one as Abraham, but then that's supposed to be the same one as Mary and Joseph. And like I've told you before, you can sit and tell a story through the zodiac if you're using a donkey instead of a horse for Pegasus, pretty much switching each other out, because these people didn't have horses at that time, and so they utilized it, and then all of a sudden horses came to them. We've talked about where that all happened from and how that works out. We talk about how it runs into Egypt with the Hyksos type people that we found out now, and it kind of been there for a long time. So what's this? We went into detail about that. But how about that Ark of the Covenant? See, all these things pretty much are hooked up with resurrection or healing and doing things like that. And that works fantastic for the mockery of Asclepius and things like that they're trying to imbibe on it. But when you have the Ark of the Covenant, it's almost something that, well, they do a pretty good job of one of the aspects in Indiana Jones where you don't want to look at it. Close your eyes, Marion. And they just zorf through there, and these ghosts in ancient time, this crap all comes. You don't open that box, because if you open that box, all this crap comes out. Well, that's like Pandora. Oh snap. But it has another effect too. Imagine that somewhere like Vatican or someplace, they have a box worth of stuff, that just in that simple box worth of stuff, not the thousands and thousands of other things, that you would be amazed what it would all of a sudden reveal to you that no one's ever been able to see except for a select few. We're aware of that going on in all kinds of museums, but it also goes on there. So, do they have some of these artifacts there? If they really existed, pretty much they would be there, except for a select few that might have been something else. There was another guy on the same Drake that I have going on. So, what else is there? Well, there's the robe of Christ. A lady was healed just to reach out and touch the robe of Christ at one time, so that one works real good. There's a person with angel wings from the last mod. I have a set of devil wings, but don't have mine anymore. We've talked about how that's just the yin and yang of everything. And aren't ravens and vultures that we're looking at a dark version? Well, the harbingers of death, and thus quote the raven no more, and all that. Well, we talked about the Ark of the Covenant. Isn't it strange how a group of ravens is a coven of ravens? Here, while I talk, we'll go fighting these dragons. Ching! Tally ho. We actually run around the whole map, trying to get 5 of them out if we can. Here, I'll throw out my boost. Get out of that. Stay out of red when it comes up like that. That means he's doing a wide attack, or that's a straightforward one. It's starting to lag. See how it slowed down everything? It's because there's a little too much going on at once. If you get caught in that dragon's breath, it will kill you. There's the success of that, and if you can get out of the fight, you can get on your deal. So there's robe of Christ, and it does those things. So that's pretty neat too. We've already mentioned quite a few, but there's more. See if I can think of another one for you. I'm sure you've already thought of ones that I haven't even said. Strangely, I've got this extra attack that actually comes from a dinosaur, which are what these bones are based on over here and such, right? We know and realize that now. But I'm using it to fight a dragon. Yeah, using dinosaur bones to fight a dragon. Thinking of these ancient weapons that they took bones that are actually bones of dinosaurs, that they might have think that they were the people of the Atlas and giants, bones of giants we talked about, and how that relates to they found dinosaur bones and they were talking about it. And that's where a lot of that comes from. Although there is Cro-Magnon man, and he was quite much larger than some of the people who had gone through such a amount. They kind of had insular dwarfism go on. There, I'm going to throw out that T-Rex again. Back in. So you can see we've gotten 3 dragons here taken care of, and everybody's gotten in on this instance that I'm on to get in with that. There, I throw out the dragon, and you can see the bonus, and it's really starting to eat away his health real quick. Too bad it doesn't show you people how much damage who does what in this, but if you get away from it, you can get back on your mount. Unless you have somebody trying to attack you. I had somebody, one of the little bitty guys, still trying to do it. There's an angel in front of me. So this is something cool in the game that you get together and you run around and do this. It was a mod years ago, a few years back. But back then, it also lagged like this back then. They've never been able to fix whenever people have too much effects going on at once, pretty much. Get out of the red and see they all got frozen. It's because this is a frost dragon. Yeah, there's ones that have different attacks and different effects, and of course he's from the north and this one's from there, and yeah. And you can find dragons in certain areas. I've already done videos on dragons and so on so much. Some people are probably a little bit tired of it. But if I was to tell you that I've told you about probably half of the lore and how it works with dragons and metal from the skies and everything, you probably wouldn't believe me at this point with all you've heard me talk about. And this is the last one of the group. So let's get him taken care of. Hopefully we have some artifacts saved. Like, here comes my T-Rex. Yeah, get out of that. It'll show you the red just a second before it does the damage. So now we got to clear the area or we can't stand here. And everybody knows it's the end one. If there's another instance, you can actually jump to another instance and start it all over. I mean, we have, wow, look at the lag. Oh my God, it locked up on me. Oh, it dashboarded me. That's wonderful. So, just go into Explorer here and pull up one of these. Oh, that's so funny. I was just looking at this earlier. Is one of the ones that pulls up. This is where they figure out that there are Ugaritic passages that are the same, are extremely similar, and have the same meaning as ones in the Bob. Now, Ugarit is in Syria, if you will, nowadays, Anatolia of ancient, what we would call Turkey today, probably in a way, but where the Tigris and Euphrates come up a little farther and a little higher than the Sumerians, where they, after the great flood that ran through the bottom part of there and killed off a lot of people and did everything that we know when came into the Bible's tale, they came over to this area. You can see that they actually had cuneiform writing and so on. And the cuneiform connected of what's later known as the Hittites, and the people are up there that the Egyptians call brother. They have the same cuneiform, and we've shown you not only genetics, where they're showing you, yeah, they have the same genetics as people of ancient Anatolia and stuff. And you're like, well, that Colchian thing comes into play, where they really, by looks, you can't discern them from any people around them necessarily, as they discuss, but what is different about them was the way that they do their linen, some rituals, and they practice circumcision just like they did, and so on. But they're connectives with people that we've shown before. So how many biblical things do they have that are ancient artifacts like that? Well, there's a cross, and of course there's the staff of Aaron, right? Staff of Moses, if you will, but then the later staff of Aaron that's been talked about so much. Let's see if I can even see it. Of Aaron, which is synonymous with Aaron, by the way. Aaron's staff. Staff of Aaron. So, what? Well, in Indiana Jones, whenever he puts that back together, that's supposed to signify the staff of Aaron. Well, what is it? Well, if you'll look at it, it's cut in that sacred mean and amount with each other, and they're plugged on each other. And if you don't have the whole thing there, you had to find the right hole in there, and the sun come in on just a certain day, so he just pulled it all off. But the sun come in on a certain day, when it goes through and goes through that gemstone, it would light a little spot along the floor. Well, the way they had the gemstone cut, the reason that they did that with CGI effects is because it would put a shattering, with the way the gemstone is, onto the walls like a kaleidoscope. And it wouldn't really signify one thing. That would have to be a different type of lens effect, but they wanted to put a gemstone in it. Still, that's the rod of Aaron. and represents the tribe of Levi. Now, if you remember, the Levites were the people that controlled these people. It wasn't really them. They were loose and amok, and it was the Levites that kept everything going, and they had the sacred stuff and all the hookup, and the little cool outfit and the breastplate that had all the things that hook up to the zodiac and all that. Yeah, and they were the ones that made decisions, and they had the Urim and Thummim, which were a couple of colored stones marking on one side, not the other, depending on how they flipped. Yeah, so that's divination. So if you could find those things, that's supposed to have been an artifact, And whenever in D&D that you use things like this, there's always an ability to use it for a certain thing. Like you have to do something that would go along with it or whatever, right? It wouldn't be something that would be just straight up. Well, Aaron's rod has been all talked about as being something just a stick to an actual flowering piece of wood that it's just a wooden rod, but he made it turn into a tree right in front of people, that it brings forth life out of death and all these things. So it still hooks up to that concept. Here is showing it where it's a cut off limb piece as Aaron's staff, the knowledge of it, right? A section, a golden section. The staff has been shown a lot of times where it has a snake on top of it. In fact, Moses turns the staff into a snake. And you go, what? Well, that's showing you back then they had the snake worship thing going on and everything. They blend it right in there. It goes right past your head. Hell, there's one in Genesis that starts it out, but that's a sacred Naga serpent. Yeah, and the whole apple story and everything. Blows past people most mind. It's like, oh, and you're supposed to be humble now for da-da-da. Why are you supposed to be humble now? Because now you've become as of gods of this earth. That's what it said, right? One guy said that if you ate it, you would die, and surely die this day. And then they ate of it, and their minds were open, and they were as gods. And then they took away the tree of life, so they didn't live forever, because then they surely would have been just like the gods. Yeah, that goes right past people. So you're supposed to be humble. Well, if you read in the Atlantean tale, these people got going real good, and they were controlling everything and stuff, but there was this great catastrophe that everybody tried to say was because of the gods. Because of what reason? Well, they apparently had ceased to live in moderation, that they had just got too high on the hog and too high of themselves, that they did this, and they tried. What was the sign of that? Well, they tried to take over all the other people and do it. And da da da, and then the day and the night, right? People are familiar with this idea and this concept. There's that breastplate that we're talking about that holds the zodiac signs. And see, some of this is still kept to this day. I'm sorry, I wavered off the Atlantean connection. Here we go. Most people know where I was going. You look at this breastplate here and you think, well, that's got no connections to the month or the zodiac or anything. Yeah, and everybody's realized it a long time ago. Let's see if I can do one for you. Anybody in the South, it's kind of a southern thing, but not so much. Women would have this, either a brooch sometimes or a ring that would be your children's ring. And you would have the birthstones of you and your husband and your children sometimes on the ring. If you had too many children, you had to keep getting the ring sized out and so on, and you would put their birth month stone inside of it. You're familiar with this, right? Well, that works exactly with that. It would be an artifact of your family if somebody had to use it in a ritual. Think about that, concept. But make no bones about it, Moses comes in, and God tells him that what you're supposed to do is try to pull off magic in front of these Egyptians, which the Egyptians are easily able to match. And it's supposed to have been all this boo. Well, he's got this sacred staff, and it's got these powers. You can do these tricks. Here it is from the movies, whenever they pull it out and get scared. And then one of them is a king snake, though. What does a king snake do? It eats other snakes. Sometimes knowledge overtakes magic, even when you're using Magic. Staff or rod of Aaron, though, it's used to measure things. Whenever they show it here, in different ways, it's cut into sections off of it, and it's the sectioned staff. It's a 3-section staff, and it has a topper on part of it, and the top on the part of it cuts through, and it says within a certain way. And then they used it in that tomb and said it points towards something, whether this, that, and the other. And it doesn't work that way. It points towards stars, and it lines up where you're at with it. It can be used like a sextant. I've showed this in other videos, and you've probably seen other videos about such things. And when you see them have this ancient staff that they had, that on the top of it had a cross with a circle around it, that connects with the zodiac. And anybody that would be intelligent with it and understand so, it would have been such. It was used before Christ. The cross was used before Christ, yes. And it still meant the same thing pretty much. Yeah. Just like the swastika and other things, we've come to find out that everybody had going on meant pretty much the same thing. But some of those were really too revealing, and they wanted to take those away. What else can you find? Well, there's that cup of Christ. We know that the people still use that today, and say the blood of Christ. And then that's in the cup of Christ, and you have the blood of Christ and the body of Christ. And most people don't realize that that hooks up to an ancient, like cannibalistic freakout ritual that is kind of weird. But whenever you eat of a god, you become a god. And so you're symbolically pulling that off, and everybody doesn't even know it. And that's what you're doing whenever you do that. And God said, partake of me. And that's the first thing that he tells them to do, which is quite strange, and most people can't discern out of it what that's supposed to mean. But so the staff of Aaron, what else is there? I know there's 3 or 4 that I wrote down for that guy, and then whenever I got to that point, I was like, man, I feel a video coming on. So, is there magic in the Bible? Well, sure. You know, he goes to Moses and does this, that, and the other. Are there other times? Yeah. Oh, something else that I left out. So we were talking about covenant, and then a coven of ravens is a group of that. That's when the dragons came. Sorry. So a coven of ravens. So now we have a covenant. It still hooks up to that same thing. The Ark of the Covenant. What does it have on it? It has these angelic creatures with their wings. And oh, snap. And the buzzards and the vultures that are on the forehead of the Egyptians are the same damn thing. And it hooks up and it means the same way. And it goes on. And then there's the secret of the snakes and the power. And that's the Uraeus. And it's there too. That's why I say I like them, because it's got the last of the animism, but you can find smatterings of it everywhere. In fact, in Sumeria, you can see the same Horus ideal, the pine cone that we've talked about, the tree of life, and the way it all hooks up, and this mythology that carries people, if you'll go correctly through it, actually through time. You can't take it literally as a moment by moment, and then, no, and then. It didn't hook up in a linear way. Over time, it pretty much covered it. Some of it does. Some of it's metaphorical. Some of it's astrotheological. Some of it's written in the stars. Did all of those happen? Some of it. Were those the people's names? I really doubt that very few of them were. Is that the way that it really worked out? No, but there's some real truth inside of mythology, even in it, as I said before. Hey, write down in the comments what I might have missed that are sacred items of Christianity and or Judaism that you would say, well, that has some magical thing to it. That had to, here's something that was supposed to have done this for somebody. You know, there's quite a few of them in the list. There are little things that people don't usually catch unless they've read the whole Bible and try to find things like this. I remember years ago I saw it was written in a book, and it took up almost a whole chapter where they talked about it, kind of like I did, and the different ones. And of course, we used that in our Dungeons and Dragons campaign whenever we went into hell as the things that we combated it with. You know, it was the anti whatever you got, and that's the way it worked. It was the gang. See, yeah. People have said all crazy things about Dungeons and Dragons games, but it's really a dice game based off percentages, and people get to make choices. So it's like you're going through a movie and making your own little choice up, like you're playing that video game. And you get to choose what you're doing somewhat. Although there are directives, and you should be doing this. And you get sacred artifacts in that game, but some of them are really too OP or overpowered, and so what you have to do is you utilize it. Like the Sun Sword, we utilize it only in the fight while we're inside of the castle of the guy that's the vampire type. And of course, the sun is against them, like we recently talked about silver being of werewolves, and it works with the moon, and how that actually works with the moon. And connections through all of that. But I guess I just wanted to blurt in here, I guess, that you think that magic isn't in the Bible and stuff, and oh, it's full of it. Twice as much as I've mentioned or more. Reoccurring themes that work off of previous ones too. I'll get down in the comments and probably throw in a couple that I have failed to mention. But peace.